manifestation requires two things. It requires you putting your energy into making things happen, which is done by visualization and how you think, and you're doing all the exercises that you do and attending to being positive more than being negative. But the other side of the coin is letting things happen as they want to. The ultimate directive in all things that we as human beings do and living systems is balance. So you can't choose one side of a pair of opposites and say, I'm going to stay here and not the other side, and think that you can find balance. Because there's constant movement between polar opposites. That's where we find the balance and the equilibrium we're looking for. So Unflappable just gives you a tool for navigating the emotional and mental turmoil of being human so that you can ride it. You can ride the waves of it. You have a deeper understanding of it, and you become less and less identified with it, and therefore you have less suffering and much more ability to be happy, centered, and peaceful. Understanding duality is like the bridge from being a human being to being a more spiritual being.
Really?
Okay. Well, yes, I believe it is, because, and this has certainly opened the doors for me, because all of the struggles of being a human being all have to do with saying whatever's happening isn't what I want.
Well, that's true, isn't it? They're all like that, even if you're in a meditation.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I don't want this thought, or I don't want that pain, or so once you understand and you really get, and this is, first you want to get it consciously, but then you need to get it unconsciously, because your unconscious mind is the one that makes the decisions about how you're going to see things and relate to things and behave. And as a hypnotherapist, I have a lot of experience that shows me that that's true, that we're really driven by our unconscious minds, not by our conscious understandings of things.
And do you still use hypnosis? I mean, could you combine hypnosis with this?
Yeah, actually, when you do some of the work, when you walk in the 6 steps, the last step has to do with walking in an infinity loop, which allows you to start putting into your brain and into your unconscious mind the strategy that this whole book is about teaching you, which is, if you're not going to set what you like up against what you dislike, then what do you do? And the strategy, the new strategy, is what this book is about, and it's based on mystical wisdom, which is ultimately embrace opposites, take impermanence and put it at the head of your advisory table. Every time you're going to make a decision, bring impermanence and invite it in and let it sit at the head of the conference table when you're making decisions.
Great.
It helps a lot, actually.
Well, it's making a huge shift in my thinking as we talk. I just it's great. Yeah.
Well, everything does change. We all know it, but we don't necessarily face it as a useful piece of wisdom to embrace, because there's so many things to face that we don't want to lose.
Well, here's the other thing, too. As you're saying it, I realize that you can really accept it and get with it, but that in itself is impermanent, so you'll have to do that again.
Yeah, nothing stays. Nothing. So if you can but what is there is the rhythm of life. The rhythm of life is there, and that doesn't change. And you can either go with that rhythm of life, or you can say, no, I don't want to go with that rhythm of life. And that's our prerogative, of course. And it's easy to say go with the flow of life, but it's not so easy to do if you don't know what the flow of life actually is. What does that mean? And in Unflappable, I'm trying to share that what I have learned in my exploration of this is life has a specific flow on this plane between opposing forces, between happy and sad, between awake and asleep, between healthy and well, between rich and poor, between being alone and together, between self and other. It flows, and you have oftentimes a lot of opposites happening at the same time, and it gets very confusing and chaotic.
It does get chaotic, doesn't it?
It really does. But there's a strategy in the book that will help you learn how to manage the different sets of polar opposites that are coming up in your life in whatever the problem is, whether it's relationship or work or power or purpose or faith. Faith is an area that's very, very powerful for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And in the book, the polarities that I talk about in faith, and you may use different words, and that's fine, that faith is actually composed of trust and doubt, operating as a polar pair that actually are married to each other and dedicated to creating your faith.
Means we can use the doubt to what?
Strengthen your trust.
Okay.
Because doubt is the inquiring component of faith.
Mm.
It's what allows you to stay free of blind faith and believe that you have the truth, right?
Yeah.
Because if you really have the truth, there's nothing to say or believe.
Yeah.
You know,
It's interesting. So doubt is like a testing tool, but it's naturally built in, right?
I'm saying it's naturally built in, and here's why. Because trust and doubt actually define each other. I mean, trust is defined by the absence of doubt, and doubt is defined by the absence of trust. So when you have those,
yes.
you can't get rid of one. The minute you say trust, your unconscious mind accesses doubt, even if there's no doubt happening. Okay?
Interesting.
In your mind, there's still these two opposites, and that's why when you go to trust, you still feel a niggle somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not a knowing. It's not a knowing. It's a trust. It's an act of faith. It's just interesting. I mean, a lot of polarities function in that way. Self and other are alone and together in the context of relationship is very much the same.
Well, and one of the things you had in here was you. When you say you, then you think me.
Absolutely. You can't not do it because you is actually defined in the mind, in the realm of ideas, as the absence of me. And I go, that's how we know the difference, that you're you and I'm me, right? So when you understand that this is going on all the time in your own mind as well as in the outer world, because a lot of people say polarities or opposites only exist in the mind, or duality only exists in the mind. Mm-hmm. And I would take exception to that because it appears that our whole universe is based upon the polarity principle. You know, that our world is, even your body is based on the tension between the positive and negative charges in your cells. You know, so that's not something that's just in your head. It's the way we describe it, of course, is all mental. But the phenomena itself is that there's tension between positive and negative, and that's what holds your cell membrane in place. So the same thing functions in every area of our lives.
So we want the dark. We want our dark. We want our shadow.
Yes, you want it. Mm-hmm. There's wisdom in it. There's wisdom in it. You don't want to identify with your shadow. You don't want to say, this is me. You want to welcome it as a visitor and say, what is your wisdom for me? What is it you're trying to show me? And when you understand it in the context of opposites, it becomes a little easier. For example, let's say I'm in a relationship and I'm starting to feel very separate from my partner. Okay, we're going on different paths, right? And I start to feel isolated and angry and a little scared. Okay. Now, if I look at my anger and my fear and my sense of separation as signals to me that I am in a place where I need the opposite. I need to feel connection. And my fear and my anger and my sense of separation and isolation are signals to me that if I think in terms of opposites, that I am really open for and need to find my balance connection. Right? And vice versa, if I'm feeling really connected to my partner, right? And then I start to feel a little suffocated. I start to feel, I start to feel a little suffocated and get a little irritated and start to get a little grumpy. You know, those, if you understand opposites and think that way, can become signals to you. These are the darker experiences. They become signals that what is really happening is you are ready to have some separation. What happens in couples is you usually polarize. One person, for example, let's say, wants to spend money.
Right.
You know, they're a very big risk taker. The other partner is very polarized to security, right, and wants to save all their money. And when it becomes extreme polarization, there starts to be fighting about it. Well, I want to take the risk. We can make more money. And the other one says, no, we need to save. The economy is really not secure now. We need to create security. And each person is so polarized and thinks that their way is the correct way and the right way that they cease to see the benefit of their partner's view, and they also cease to see the downside of their own view.
So they're embodying the polarities in their entire personality, sort of thing.
Absolutely. Big dynamic in couples. So when I show them the 6-step process and show them how to work with the opposites that they're embodying and give them a tool for how to navigate that, then what I see is enormous changes in people, in couples, because then they're able to navigate their differences in a way that allows them to see the benefits of both points of view and to also see the weaknesses of both points of view. Because, again, here's where impermanence comes in. If you decide there's some one way to do something and you want to get stable in that and not move, you are not honoring the nature of impermanence. Because the ultimate directive in all things that we as human beings do and living systems is balance. So you can't choose one side of a pair of opposites and say, I'm going to stay here and not the other side, and think that you can find balance. Because there's constant movement between polar opposites. That's where we find the balance and the equilibrium we're looking for. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I'm just, the word that's popping up in my mind as you speak is forgiveness. Is that a route to forgiveness as well?
I think understanding anything you can about yourself is a route to forgiveness. And I think understanding about polarities allows you to forgive everyone for not being who you want them to be. And that makes a huge difference when you can just let people be who they are and you know how to live with that. Now, of course, if it's a very abusive relationship or something, you're not going to want to live with that. You're going to want to move on. But, the way in which you move on, the understanding that you're using to free yourself to move on can perhaps hold you back in your spiritual or personal evolution, or it can catapult you forward.
Everything I believe, I figure, is open for renegotiation or...
That's great. I think that's great because, beliefs are things that they're really things we assume to be true, but if we really want to know what's true, you have to keep clear that your beliefs are just beliefs and they're open to change. Right?
And they kind of decree what our life is going to be like at times if we don't even know what they are. It's very limiting, isn't it?
It is very limiting. So I think that the more that you allow yourself to understand opposites, the easier it is to create a relationship with life that is more accepting, because there's nothing that you can do about that dynamic. There's always going to be good and bad and right and wrong and up and down and in and out. Because that's, unless you're brain dead, you don't have a mind anymore, you're going to have to live in that world of conceptual reality. And that's really the problem, is how we navigate that.
Yeah, so what about all this manifestation and creating our reality? I don't know if it was your influence 17 years ago, but I always say to people, from where? You can't just manifest without being in touch with what's subconscious or unconscious, right?
It's interesting. Manifestation is an interesting area. I think there's a lot of truth in manifestation for sure, manifestation, if we buy karma, manifestation relates to that by being able to focus on what you want your future to be, not in your thoughts and your emotions, etc. The thing where I think things like The Secret have missed a point of communication to people is, again, looking through the glasses of opposites, because manifestation requires two things. It requires you putting your energy into making things happen, which is done by visualization and how you think and doing all the exercises that you do and attending to being positive more than being negative. But the other side of the coin is letting things happen as they want to. So one of them is making them happen as you want them to and letting them happen as they want to.
As they want to. So you have to let some things go. You have to let some things morph, right?
Yes, and to continue and to do this every day, because this is a process that can be going back and forth between those two. In an hour, in a day, you may go back and forth between those two many times, or in the course of the day, or you may do one for a week and then the other for a week. I mean, it's got a rhythm, but to know that that's there and that to focus on making something happen to the exclusion of knowing that the other half of the coin is letting it happen as it wants to. It's just a different way of talking about it, because in manifestation they want you to do your visualization, create your idea of what you want, imagine it's already happened, feel it, put in the emotional affect, which is very important in that model, and then let it go and don't be attached to the outcome. Mm-hmm. Well, that's very hard to do if you don't understand about opposites, right? Mm-hmm. Because you're going to want to control how it comes out.
Right.
Right. So unless you really have that say that you understand that you can't have one without the other. Again, they define each other. Making something happen is defined by the absence of letting it be what it is.
And that isn't necessarily karma or not karma. That's just is, right?
It just is. Yeah. I mean, that's the way the world works. You know. I mean,
mm-hmm.
It sounds so funny, but this is verifiable by anyone. Mm-hmm. You know, nobody argues with me that there are opposites. I've never met a person who argues with me that our world is filled with opposites. A lot of people disagree with me when I say the best strategy is to embrace them. Some people say, no, we have to get rid of them. Mm-hmm. We have to get rid of the one. And I'm saying, ultimately, that's the choice that takes us down the road of increased pain and suffering. If you want somebody to accept you, change yourself so you accept them. Mm-hmm. And that will change the dynamic. It may not make that person love you, mm-hmm. but it will definitely change the dynamic. It has to. Once you've extricated yourself from the situation, then you can be around that person. It may be stressful, because it's not fun.
Right.
And you may decide you don't want to do it very often at all because it's just stressful and it's not fun. And why would you want to do that? When you look at it from a polarity perspective, you want to balance out how much time you spend connecting and how much time you spend separating. And you don't need to feel guilty about it.
And you don't need to feel guilty about it.
No, that's the key. Yeah. Once you understand here's a polarity dynamic going on, and you're not so concerned with the other person, but you're concerned with you and how you are navigating this dynamic that's going on inside of you in that situation.
Right.
Okay. And I think that the six-step process that is shared in Unflappable gives you very precise directions for how to do that.
Well, I'm going to get my paper and pencil out and get to work.
Yeah. Because you both, with family, you need to be connected to family because you are, mm-hmm. and you also need to be separate from your family because you are.
And because you're launching your beingness, right?
That's right. You need to individuate purely at a psychological and emotional level, but spiritually as well. You're a member of the whole, but you're also a unique individual. And that's another paradox. How can you be somebody who's just another little, cog in the wheel, and at the same time utterly unique? And people understand sometimes that notion, mm-hmm. but when you get put in the situation, you find yourself in a struggle. Mm-hmm. And that's where Unflappable, fear, hurt, all of those things. Mm-hmm. Really, Unflappable just gives you a tool for navigating the emotional and mental turmoil of being human so that you can ride it. You can ride the waves of it. You have a deeper understanding of it, and you become less and less identified with it, mm-hmm. and therefore you have less suffering and much more ability to be happy, centered, and peaceful.
And self-loving.
And self-loving, absolutely, because mm-hmm. your poor personality, it has to go back and forth between these things. It's the nature of its design.
No wonder we're a little torqued at times, eh?
Yeah, and when you start loving your inner spiritual terrorist or your inner critic or any part of you or your inner fatty or
just knowing it's okay to have it. That's probably a huge relief for people. I found all the way through this book, I'm going, so much acceptance, so much,
yes,
aha.
And that's really what I think, why I say getting a new relationship with opposites is so incredibly valuable. It catapults your self-awareness, your self-love, and your ability to just be with things as they are enormously quickly, because that is the foundation of how most things that flow in our lives are functioning, is in the nature of opposites. Science has discovered that the brain can grow new neural pathways and does. And because in my background with physiological psychology, you don't have any behavior that can arise in a human being without a neural coding for that behavior in the brain.
Right.
You can't do anything that your brain doesn't have a coding to do. So the 6-step process is designed to help, and this book is designed to help your brain lay down the neural coding that will allow you to understand opposites better, which leads to more self-acceptance.
I felt freed. It's a wonderful book for that, and I really recommend people take a chance on freeing themselves up and go through it with a fine-tooth comb. You have several things going, though. You have a wisdom school?
I am in the process now. Yeah, I am in the process now of trying to put everything online for a while, and so I can reach more people. So I have one training coming up in the fall where I actually take your hand and walk through the 6 steps with you.
Oh, wonderful.
The ones that are in the book, but this is with me, and it's a program that's 8 weeks long, and you will get a module online every week for you to work through at your own pace and leisure. And then on the Saturday of each week, we'll have a live phone conversation with the group of people in the training. Great. And you'll be able to talk with me directly at that time and ask questions and get them answered. And there'll be downloads for you to, worksheets and things for you to do. And then there's a bunch of other cool bonuses. You can go to my website and see what that is, and that'll be happening in October, actually. So that's the first thing that I'm doing. And then at the end of that, there is a couple of days long workshop in person, which you also have a free ticket to if you join the training, where you can come to Seattle and participate in, a 2 or 3 day training that I'll be doing with the people who've been in the workshop.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so you get a taste of doing it at your own leisure, and also some time with me to do more trance work and intensive work at the unconscious level.
That's wonderful.
I think that's the biggest challenge of all, is the material and the spiritual and the inner and the outer. And knowing about opposites and having changed my relationship to them makes it much easier to be what we started off talking about, which is a marketplace mystic, someone who's deeply engaged in their inner evolution while simultaneously being deeply engaged in the game of the outer world.
Yeah, and people who are contributors in a big way, even in the marketplace. Eh?
Yeah. It seems to be what we're being called to do these days. So
I love it.
I hope that my book is helpful to people, and I really appreciate your inviting me on to talk with me, Veronica. It's very nice. I would like to share this material with as many people as I can, so thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to your folks.
Well, it's wonderful, and I hope that our listeners will feel free to, email me, Veronica at VeronicaEntwistle with feedback, or you can email Ragini Michaels. What is your email? Is that?
It's rm@raginimichaels.com, and Ragini is spelled Ragini.
Okay, and your website is really an interesting website. It's simple. That's what I love about Unflappable as well. It's very deep and very complex, I know, but it's simple. It's a paradox in itself.
It is indeed.
And it can take you right there.
Yeah. The website is just raginimichaels.com.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Ragini, and we'll be in touch.
Oh, you're welcome, Veronica. Take care, and my best to you.